I first became interested in dinosaurs. I think every young boy is interested in dinosaurs. I remember my mother bought me a set of books called the Wonder Books in the early days, and it had pictures of prehistoric animals restored by Charles Knight. And most young people go to the museum, to see the bones and the fact that these creatures lived and they're fantastic shape. The fantasy element in dinosaurs, I think, was the main attraction. And I tried to bring that out later. I used to make little models of the La Brea tar pits, the different types of bones they discovered there. And I found out when I saw the film King Kong how to make them move. And then I learned about stop motion, and it gradually developed into a hobby and then into a profession. It's very difficult to break into the film business when I started out because the unions were very strong. You either had to belong to a union, you couldn't get a job in the studio unless you belonged to the union, and you couldn't join the union unless you had a job in the studio. So it was rather a difficult situation. But I persisted in making 16mm film, and finally I got my first professional job with George Pal's Puppetoons before the war. And that was a great experience. We made several pictures in Hollywood. I met Mr. Schneer, Charles Schneer, and we made contemporary pictures like Earth versus the Flying Saucers, and It Came from Beneath the Sea, and The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. And they were in black and white, of course. And we came over to England mainly to use the sodium backing process that Rank Laboratory had for the film Gulliver, The Three Worlds of Gulliver. And that we decided to stay because we could find new locations so close. In Europe, we found we had new locations, locations that had never been seen before, and they fit fantasy films perfectly. And we shot most of our films, 6 films in Spain, including 1 Million Years B.C. We shot in the Canary Islands. My first meeting with Hammer, I was contacted by Anthony Hines. They wanted to remake a film called 1 Million B.C, which Hal Roach made some years ago. And in that film, they used live lizards. They used a crocodile with a fin glued on its back, and a monitor lizard, again with horns glued on it. I was loaned to Hammer from Morningside Production. I worked with Michael Carreras, who wrote the script and was producer, and then we had Don Chaffee, who directed the film. The budget on that film was £422,000, I think. It was more than the usual Hammer film. I thought that by having a live lizard for the first viewing of these animals, that it would make you believe the rest of it more easier to believe that the animation was alive. But unfortunately, it backfired. When we photographed the live iguana, he fell asleep in front of the lights, and finally the handler had to almost work him like a hand puppet because they got very lethargic when the heat of the light on the set would affect them very much. As you know, motion pictures are made up of single frame, 16 to the foot on 35mm. And you move the animal slightly when the shutters close, and then take a picture. You move it again, take a picture. You move it again. It's a series of still pictures, and when they run at 24 frames a second, you get the impression that the animal is moving on its own. This is a creature that, the Allosaurus, that raided the village of the cavemen. I used an Allosaurus, a Tyrannosaurus combination in Valley of Guanji, And they're very interesting to work with because they only have two legs. The four-legged dinosaurs walk more or less like an elephant or some sort of animal that you're familiar with. But I think the Allosaurus is one of my favorites. Well, actors have imagination, and sometimes they have to look at just a pole. And we say this pole represents an Allosaurus. So they would have in mind the type of reaction that if they could see an animal like that. But usually there was nothing on the set except a man holding a pole. One scene in 1 Million B.C., the pterodactyl picks up Raquel Welch. We have the real Raquel Welch falling into a hole dug in the ground behind a rock. And then as the pterodactyl goes down, we substitute a little miniature figure that is animated as the bird flies away with her. So that gave the impression that the bird actually picked up the real Raquel Welch. This is one example of a pterodactyl that picked up Raquel Welch. That was one of the first scenes I did in the picture to put together after we photographed the live action. And as you see, this model moves. It has every joint that a real bird of this nature would have. Pterodactyl is very flexible. As you can see, the wings move. It can collapse its wing. It flaps them in the normal manner of a bird, and its head will move, its beak will close. So it has to have every joint that a real bird of this nature would have. I gave it bat wings to make it look airborne. If you don't, otherwise it's just a straight piece of leather, and the bat wings give it the effect that it's airborne. When a bird flies through the air, you have to suspend it with wires. The term has come about that it's an aerial brace. It's a series of little pulleys that you can control the wires that hold the bird. Of course, the wires have to be so fine that you don't see them. So it's very necessary sometimes to paint them out, to paint them the same color as the background. Today with CGI, you can paint wires out very easily. And I think that's one of the advantages of combination. This is all I have left of the Triceratops, in which a Ceratosaurus had a fight with it, and the Triceratops won. But I used the body for another dinosaur in Guangxi, so the body no longer exists. But again, the Triceratops is flexible. Its mouth will open and close. It can breathe. It has a bladder in it. And that particular sequence, I think, was very effective. That's usually what you need in a picture of this nature, is to have a fight somewhere in the picture. We had several, of course. We shot the backgrounds all in Canary Islands, and they worked out so well. They were sort of a prehistoric concept of that type of volcanic eruption that existed in those days. You have many things to battle when you're making a film, mainly the weather, and they had to be changed on location, and like the Brontosaurus sequence was completely rewritten in the Canary Islands the last moment so that we could change the whole structure of the script and the climax. The final scene in the picture that we designed originally was to have the Brontosaurus attack the cavemen. That was discarded because we had so much animation in it and we had to keep to a budget. So that was discarded in favor of the the action sequence that was finally used in the film. Yeah, I think it was Hammer's most successful film. It was received quite well in America particularly, and all through Europe, because it made the animals appear in a realistic way as a dinosaur would appear, instead of familiar lizards that just have fins glued on their back. So I think that was an asset, that we used animation rather than live lizards with that have been doctored up physically. People did not live in the days of the dinosaur. But then you must realize that the picture is being made for entertainment and not for professors. That is one of the problems, that some critics like to criticize the fact that people didn't live. But there would be no drama if you didn't have humans with the dinosaurs. And I think one has to take that license for a theatrical entertainment picture, because it's not supposed to be a documentary. So you can use your imagination a great deal. I think if it were remade today, one would make certain changes, yes. I think the picture stands up quite well for what it is. It gives a prehistoric feeling, and I think it'll last due to the fact that DVDs can last longer than tapes, and future generations will be able to see that a lot of filmmaking today is simply the reinvention of the wheel.